Perhaps in the recent holiday season, you received something like a resin 3D printer. And as you have already probably discovered, or as many of you probably know if you already own one, or if you're contemplating one, these are phenomenal machines. However, boy, does the resin stink. And it's probably not all that healthy for you to be breathing in the fumes from this. And if you're not living alone, you're going to find, even if you find it tolerable, the other people in your household aren't going to be very impressed with how bad it smells. We've got a solution for that. Why don't you stick around and find out? Printable Science presents a 3D printed window venting system, so you can get rid of those nasty odors from your 3D printer, your spray painting booth, you name it. So here's our solution. It's a window venting system which consists of some 3D printed panels, and at the bottom a panel which is specially made for the transition between a standard 4-inch vent or duct through to the rectangular face of the panel that fits in your window. And of course all you have to do is take your standard vent and put it on. This always works better in the movies. There you go, pretty straightforward. And then just put your clamp on top. Tighten it up. And there you go. All ready to save your lungs from the perils of working with 3D printers, 3D, or I should say painting booths, you name it, anything that generates odor in your home from one of the two or more of the hobbies that you get yourself engaged in. So there are a couple of assembly tips that I think and options that you should consider. So I urge you, if you are considering printing this off, before you go printing and assembling and installing, to stick around and see if any of that applies to you or is something you want to take advantage of. There are a variety of files that go with this project for our window venting system. The most noticeable or recognizable one, of course, is the transition piece from the duct to the outside window. It is a 4-inch standard size duct. There are 3-inch and smaller types, tubings available, of course, but you pay a real premium for a non-standard size. So unless you really want one, and if you're a Patreon supporter, of course, we'll be happy to send you files that'll accommodate any diameter of duct that you have. Bear in mind, the smaller the duct becomes, the thinner the frame is, the larger the duct becomes, the wider the frame has to become. But other than that, you should be able to get along fine and economically with just the 4-inch duct. And at the top of that, and just to avoid things like supports and all this stuff, nothing here requires supports or anything fancy on your printer. You can just print it off the way it is. The one piece, though, that to enable that comes together is the transitionary piece that allows you to put on a sliding adjustable top so you can adjust the whole system to fit your window. And that has some little pins that fit onto the top of the main window vent frame, and then it just becomes a question of stacking them to fit your window. There is, and regardless of how tall your window is, you can just keep on adding pieces. There is one piece, though, that is got a flat edge at the top rather than the keyed piece for attaching another one. And that just slides onto the top, and then you've got, for instance, with this example, you've got a piece that can fit in a space from there to there. So you got a fair amount of space to go. In order to make it a snug fit, and if you're in a cold climate or wanting to prevent cold air from coming in, or in a warm climate and wanting to prevent air conditioning from eking out, you can get a hold of just some regular adhesive insulation stripping, and put that on. Now, the one thing to bear in mind, of course, is that you can also glue these into place like this. The disadvantage of that, and really the only disadvantage, is the way it stands. If you're not going to have that window, this vent, installed in your window all the time, then you've got the advantage that if you don't glue it, it all folds up to a fairly small size that you can probably store more easily than a full window venting system. There's also a cap enclosed so that if you don't have the pipe or the duct attached, you can put that on there, and that'll prevent major loss of air from one thing to the other. And then finally, there is a little grate that you can glue in to it so that animals won't be particularly able to go through the vent into your home. And just a touch of glue in the four corners, and slapping it on, and that should take care of all your needs. So once you've printed off all the parts you require, printing off the different sizes that you need to fit the window space you've got, you can do the assembly, and I'll just and installation into your window. And just before you do that, I want to point out just a couple more things. First of all, of course, you don't have to print this in our signature purple filament. Matter of fact, I'd recommend that you print it in clear filament, because the advantage to that is is that it still lets most of the light through, and doesn't make your room necessarily dark or even particularly obvious that you got something in there. The other thing I just wanted to point out is this is printed in PLA. The window that I have this in here is not particularly exposed to the elements. If you've got something that the sun beats on all day long, you might want to consider redoing this in, or printing this in something like ASA or any, maybe even PETG. You're going to find your mileage varies. All these pieces were printed in PLA with 2 perimeters, 2 bottom layers, 3 top layers, and an infill of 20%. You can certainly get away with 10% or even less infill for these parts, as structural requirements are pretty low. And as mentioned in the video, you probably might want to consider the use of a different filament depending on what your requirements are for these pieces. If they're going to be sitting in exposed weather or under sun, you probably want something more durable than PLA, or something that won't melt, or something that won't weather. Anyway, there's lots of filaments to choose from. Just give that some thought before you actually start printing things off. I had, when I started out with this project, thought that what I would do is I'd go to the local big box hardware store and buy some sheet of plexiglass or something, and then print off some pieces on the 3D printer that would kind of hook into the plastic. But what I found is that, particularly with the enormous drop in filament prices these days, it's actually pretty cheap to just use filament to make all these panels that you need. Now, it does take a lot of time, but it doesn't cost much money. So why go and spend money trying to get a piece of plexiglass that you don't really need? So let's go do the assembly, and that's about it. Inserting the window venting system is pretty straightforward. Once you've assembled the height that you need for your window, or the width that you need for your sliding door, at least generally, there's, as we saw, an expansion chamber that you can adjust. So we just open the window, and most aluminum sliding windows, they have a channel in here, and that's what the width of the frame is. You might want to check the dimension of this with the frame in your window, and adjust things if required. If you're a Patreon supporter, of course, you can dial up whatever thickness you want, because, well, that's what you get for being a Patreon supporter. Anyway, you take the window, and you take the venting system, you slide it in that channel, you close the window, and then you just push up the adjustable part until it disappears up in the top, and there you go. So that's pretty straightforward. And as I mentioned before, if you've got concerns about leaks or anything like that, you can always put some weather stripping on these, and that'll keep things nice and snug even when it's cold outside. Thanks for watching. We hope our 3D printed window venting system is of use to you, and if you've got any comments or questions, just leave them below and we'll get right to them. If you want any custom thicknesses or design elements that are easily manipulated, and you're a Patreon supporter, just you know what to do, and we'll be happy to ship you those custom files. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more projects like this, I think by this time you know what you need to do. So please do it. I've added a link below where you can go to download the files you need for this project, and also consider dropping by our website, printablescience.com, where all the science that fits, we print.